Hello, my name is Scott Moulton, and this is my second speech for Professor Zubrick's online speech class. Today's speech will be on water quality surveys in the state of Maine and their importance. A water quality survey is a collection of data that explains how good of quality the water is in the lake. For example, you take nitrate samples and phosphate levels, and you check the pH of the water. You also see the turbidity of the water, which is how clear it is. The phosphate and nitrate levels tell you how much algae will be in the water, which is important. You check oxygen levels in the water, which tells you if it can sustain life, like fish or aquatic insects and plants. And these are important because these tests tell you how good the water is and if there's pollution going into the water. There are many kinds of pollution. A lot of people think for water pollution there would be sewage or a lot of dumping in the water and trash, but there's a lot of pollution that a lot of people forget, like non-point pollution, which is pollution from many different angles, like agricultural runoff and rain runoff and watershed. And what that is when it rains, the rain makes the ground loose and brings up a lot of the soil and the nutrients in the soil. And when that rain goes into the lake, all those nutrients go into the lake. And with a flux of the nutrients, you can have it affects the life in the lake greatly. For example, if there was a farm with a lot of rain runoff, you might get high nitrogen levels and phosphate levels, and with these high levels you could create a lot of algae, and with that algae the water gets less clear, which means less photosynthesis for plant life, which would kill a lot of the plants. And with all that dead algae in the water, you create a problem with oxygen, which would kill many of the fish, many other life in the lake. So a lot of water runoff is a big concern with a lot of the lakes. And another thing is you could have, with agriculture, there's a lot of manure on fields, and when it rains, it drains the manure from the fields into the water, and there's problems with E. coli. So there are many kinds of pollution that can affect a lake overall. But there's also many ways to correct the pollution. For example, if you have a lake with a lot of cabins on the edges of the lake, and you could have a lot of runoff from yards, and so a good way to correct the watershed pollution from these yards is, steps or rocks or more plant life, something to slow down water before it gets into the lake. And the plant life helps absorb nutrients before it comes into the lake. So there are many ways, feasible ways, to correct a lot of non-point solution. And one of the biggest problems is the point solution, which would be sewage outlets and businesses dumping chemicals into a lake. And the Water Conservation Act limits how much a company or group can dump into a specific lake, which is good, but there's a lot of non-feasible ways to correct these. It's very difficult sometimes for a lot of companies to move their pollution to different areas, and because that can affect other lakes altogether. There's also radical ways to correct lakes. For example, you can drain a lake and have the water pour out into other outlets, other lakes and rivers, and that's a good way to shock a lot of the nutrients out of the lake in order to hope it balances out. There's many chemicals and irons you can put into a lake that can absorb the phosphorus levels, which creates a chalky substance on the bottom of the lake. And with that, that's another way to correct the pollution, but it's very expensive. And these water quality surveys tell us what's wrong with the lake and how it's going, and the main DEP keeps a lot of records of the surveys, so you can see over time for many years how the lake has been doing and if it's getting better or worse, and we can effectively see if it needs to be corrected or if it's doing better. So overall, Maine lake quality is a big thing. There's a lot of lakes in Maine, and it's good to keep them clean and safe for people to swim in or for drinking water. So water quality surveys are big, and keeping pollution out of our lakes is a good reason to use water quality surveys to see which lakes need the most help. So this has been my second speech for Professor Zubrick's speech class, and thank you.